What's up, everybody? It's time for the Infinity Edge podcast behind the paywall. Totally tricked everyone yesterday by calling it a codcast. They have no idea that this is actually a podcast for League of Legends DFS. But if you did pay attention to what we were talking about yesterday, I think we were pretty accurate. Mad Lions won, Misfits won, G2 won, Fnatic won, and then Vitality had the upset over SK Gaming. I won a ticket for that contest tomorrow, and I'm pumped.
Nice.
Excited about that.
Congrats.
That should be fun. Thank you. But enough about me. Let's get into... I guess we could either start with tomorrow. Did you two have anything to say about what happened today?
I thought we did a pretty good job yesterday. I definitely made money on the slate. It wasn't like a huge day. I will say that now that we're back behind the paywall, because you are subscribed to the esports department if you're watching this, the cash game out there in the higher stakes is just use the esports department's projections and play those, and you're probably going to be profitable. Like, I don't want to call anyone out or anything. Like, I don't give a shit who I'm beating. Like, I don't play for my ego, really. I play to buy my kid a stroller, but but there are pros from other sports who play cash games in League of Legends are quite beatable. That's all I'll say about that.
Word Ghost. Anything about today's slate, or should we just go on to tomorrow?
I wish G2 scored a bit. G2 scored a bit more, but, they did not.
They did not.
But yeah, I had a short stack of G2. They didn't score as much as I wanted to, but it happens.
I had the $10,000 lineup, except I had the Razor captain instead of Elyoya captain, so that was a little upsetting. But such is life.
It was just one off, and you would have had it.
Yeah, if I had just switched them, Elyoya into the captain slot and then put Razork in the jungle. You could say
so that would have been a 3-4.
No,
2-man stack.
I think
players.
I think maybe
right now.
Yeah, I think maybe then I would have had to switch the mid laner too, maybe something like that. It was really close.
Well, feels bad, man.
Well, let's hop right into this thing. We got the LEC and LCS to talk about. Start off with the LEC slate. Our first game of the slate is going to be Schalke 0-4, 5-9 versus Australis 3-11. Schalke today looked like they're a little competitive against Mad Lions. Then the mid game kind of happened and all hell broke loose. Mad Lions started winning team fights and Mad took up the victory. Australis lost to Misfits yesterday. Alan, we'll start with you on this one. Schalke 0-4 versus Australis. Who do you like here?
I think that this is a pretty reasonable spot to take a shot on Australis, who has been like a very good kills per win kind of team, and they're playing someone who I think that is probably pretty beatable for them at this point in the season. I don't really know what's going on with Schalke. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, and then today they just brought out like a very aggressive look against Mad Lions, which was interesting after they had kind of been the scaling team all year long, and then I was like, oh my god, is Schalke gonna get there on this slate, where I was basically like, just give up on this horrible team. But no, they didn't, because they just they haven't been playing out like skirmishes and team fights very well. So I think it's a reasonable spot to play Australis as a dog with some of the big favorites. I won't play Schalke, even though I think I do expect Schalke to win the game. I would expect them to go back to what worked for them early in the season, which is more of like a macro heavy game against a bad team. And if Australis is going to win this game, I think it has to get a little bloody. So for me, Australis is the side. And then I think the esports department projections also kind of liked Australis more than Schalke here. Actually, they like Schalke quite a bit too, which is interesting. So something to consider there, but I personally don't putting Schalke in my lineups just because they're going to be the salary's too high for me to make combos I like there.
Yeah, if you are new and you use the code IEDGE and you're watching the shows on Saturday and Sunday, those projections are based off the team winning. Just so anyone new who's looking at those projections for the first time. Michael, we'll kick it over to you. Schalke 04 versus Astralis. Who do you like here? Will this one be DFS relevant? How are you handling this?
Sure. So, yeah, today I was really upset when I was watching the Mad Lions against Schalke game in the early game because they were just continuously getting dove bot lane. And it just looked really stupid how they had Jhin and Ahri because of like the way that their damage was going to be put out was like a burst mage and then a burst AD carry. And then they have Graves, who is like their highest sustained damage, which just seemed like it was going to fail really hard. But Schalke just continuously made bad decisions during the mid game that let Mad Lions like get back into the game. I think at the biggest gold lead that Schalke had was probably under 2,000 gold anyways.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a huge comeback or anything like that. But good for Mad Lions to come back in that situation. They're the reason why I actually qualified for the contest tomorrow. Everybody had very similar lineups in the qualifier. Like you'll see that a lot in the 151 qualifier. For example, I'm playing against Alan in one of them right now. He will lose. Well, he might not lose, but he will probably lose. Did you have Evil Geniuses in your lineup? You had CLG, right?
Yeah, I think I have CLG and Cloud9.
C9. Yeah. I have C9 EG, so we'll see how that goes. But basically, Astralis, I do agree that it's an interesting team to play because you would hope that it increases Schalke's ceiling in a win. And then you would also think that if Astralis won, that they'd have a really good chance of being like a relevant team for the optimal lineup on the slate. I think that the way that I would want to play it tomorrow is maybe cap my exposure to Schalke at like 10% and then fade Astralis altogether. Because I think that Astralis is going to be a popular option tomorrow. So Broken Blade against White Knight. I think Broken Blade is much better than White Knight. There are a lot of top laners that White Knight can do well against, and Schalke hasn't really been drafting for Broken Blade, which is somewhat concerning. Like they played Gnar into Sion today. Like you're never going to do enough to keep Sion from scaling into the late game. That was probably their biggest mistake today, was that they had no tanks against the Sion composition. So it was like a team with a tank versus a team without a tank. I think that was pretty relevant today. Gilius against Zanzara. I think Gilius is the better player. There are ways for Astralis to get a good draft where Zanzara is on something like Skarner. So that's always relevant and something to keep in the back of your mind. It puts a little bit of additional pressure on the draft. Abadage against Magifelix. Abadage is probably a little bit better. Like I could think of a world where in EU Masters you have like Abadage, Magifelix, Vedio, Blue, and like they would just be pretty similar to one another. I don't think anyone's really separated themselves that much outside of the fact that Abadage has had some good performances on stage. But one thing that I think everyone who's watching this video and like takes the time to actually think about League of Legends and watch the matches and has probably been around for about a year at least, you realize that even if you're not a good team, if you get the win, you're going to look good. So I think that's probably what Abadage benefits from the most. And then we have Neon and Limit. They said something strange. I was surprised that Schalke said like they play around their bot lane. If playing around your bot lane means scaling really hard in the late game, then sure. But I haven't seen it that much from them. Today was a good example of playing around your bot lane because they had Shen Hecarim and continuously dove. But that's more of a team play in my opinion. So I guess tomato. And then Neon and Limit against Jeskla and Promise Q. I could see that going either way. I'm not convinced that Schalke is much better talent-wise in any role. But ultimately, because of the other teams that we can play in the LEC and the tendencies of those teams, I can't see myself getting more than 10% Schalke, even if they're winning. Unless you can get like some really good combinations with them because they're like the fourth most expensive or fifth most expensive in a bunch of spots. But that's about it. I think the play is probably fade Astralis and just hope that Schalke gets a generic garbage win.
Yeah.
With low kills.
Just like looking at, I was building a little bit while you were talking on the screen here too. Just like looking at what you can do with the salaries, it does look like if you pick a side of this game, like if you have a good feeling about one side of this game, you can play them with some pretty good combinations. So I was wrong about that with Schalke. So that might make me play a little more Schalke than I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll roll right into our second matchup on the slate. We have Vitality 3-11 versus XL 5-9. Vitality coming out with a surprising win here against SK, I must say. Probably the only one who thought they were really going to win was Roberts in the Discord, so I bet he's a happy man. XL falling a bit behind here. They mention it every day on the cast. They haven't made playoffs. They could curse them into not making playoffs, and Vitality needs this win to keep their dreams alive. Michael, we'll start with you on this one. Vitality versus XL. Who are you going with this matchup? Who's winning this thing?
Sure. So we'll start with the lane by lane. Vitality is actually listed as the favorite, which is pretty surprising. Is that actually how the books have it listed as well? Yeah, they have it minus 122 for Vitality. I would say XL should definitely be the favorites here. I think that this may be like a crown shot influence kind of thing where just a more popular team, maybe the books are afraid of getting more money from them. I think that Cries against Shigenda isn't really going to be that impactful during the laning phase unless Shigenda wins very early or isn't able to punish hard enough and Cries outscales them into the late game. I would assume that's just like the baseline you should kind of predict around because Cries generally goes for more of a late game champion and Shigenda doesn't as often. Skeens against Dan, it's one of the only matchups where I'm going to say Skeens is the better jungler. Melitza and Chekolad I think are very close. Crown Shot and LeBrob against Patrick and Torre. I prefer Patrick and Torre. I know that Crown Shot has the bigger name, but I still think that XL has shown they're better at playing around their bot lane. The one issue I have is that it does feel like you want to play the underdog because of the salary savings regardless. So if Vitality was the underdog, I would probably like them as a DraftKings play tomorrow. Both of these teams, I'm sure from your bloodiness rating, are either average or below average just because they generally have lower kill score games. So that would scare me a little bit. The one thing that I think we've kind of noticed is that in these spots, I think it would probably increase the chance of one of them trying to play faster because they know they're somewhat similar. I don't have a great feel for this game, honestly. I would just assume that XL is a mispriced underdog and that you should try to get exposure to them. Didn't we think that Vitality was going to be better at the beginning of the season than XL?
Yeah, I definitely did. I thought that Vitality was going to be like the 5th best team in the LEC, and they've been really bad.
Yeah, so that's somewhat concerning because if we were correct, then we should be playing Vitality every time here. If we were incorrect, then we just have a favorite that's listed as an underdog. So my gut says play XL. I understand that it might look stupid tomorrow, but I think that's probably the way that I would go. In regards to the ego ranking, Vitality is the higher team in the ego ranking. They have a 19% advantage, and that's somewhat like significant. So I guess that is another reason why you should consider playing Vitality tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that 17% is it's only 59%. Or 19%. It's still 59%. That's interesting. The numbers are kind of telling me to go towards Vitality. So the fact that I had Vitality rated higher probably earlier on, and the ego ranking is telling me to play them. Those are a few reasons why I would actually consider it. But then it gets to the point where it's like, how much do you think they're going to be owned, and what are the chances they're the optimal stack? So that doesn't feel good. It's like if they win 50% of the time and they're one of 5 teams that wins, you would want to limit your exposure to 10%, probably. Something like that. I think that's the best you can do for either team in this spot because you're not going to feel good about them winning. So if you have a good take on it and you feel confident in one of these teams and have a reason why it would go over their like expected kill score, then go for it. But it's going to be a contrarian play for sure.
Yeah. I think when I look at this game, I'm like, these are two teams that need a win to stay alive in the playoff picture. They are kind of built towards like lower score games anyway, and then the context of the game probably makes them want to go even slower into the game. So I'm like, are we going to see the first kill in this game at like 21 minutes? So I think I would rather just not play this game, especially in the LEC where there's so many options, I think, side of this game. But that could be a reason to play it, because I'm sure that there are plenty of people who think like I do. But even if we look over at the esports department projections, like the top projected player from this game is Patrick, and he's like 9th on the list or something like that. So I mean, it would be a bit of a long shot to try and get like a main stack from this game, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Let's move on to our third and probably most interesting match of the slate. Fnatic versus SK. Both of these teams are coming to this game at 8-6. Yesterday, Fnatic beat XL, which we've already talked about, and SK lost to Vitality. This one's going to probably mean something for seeding and playoffs, so both of these teams are going to come into this one seriously, and I'm going to be kind of disappointed if they kind of take things easy and don't give their best foot. So we'll start with you, Alan, on this one. Fnatic versus SK. How are you handling this matchup? Will you be playing it in DFS?
Yeah, so I think that rather than tell you why I think Fnatic is better than SK, because I think like anyone who has ever watched the LEC in the last 3 years could probably give you that information, I will just say yes, I'm going to play Fnatic in this game. I won't play any SK. I would be very surprised if SK won this game, to be honest. So the question is like, how do you play Fnatic in a way that it's different enough tomorrow? Because I do think that they will be a very, very popular team on the slate. They just score a lot of points when they win. I don't know if they'll be more popular than G2. They were today, which was kind of interesting. So so it could probably get kind of close. So I think in that case, I would just like, I have been starting to look at like, how can I lock in combinations that are lower owned with Fnatic, and I usually just will like take the optimizer, and because if you just like bare run the optimizer with the Fnatic, because upset is projected so highly on the slate, you're just going to get like a shit ton of upset combinations, which might be one way to play. Personally, I like to like vary my captains a little bit because I don't play that many lineups. So instead of like trying to play, 6 combinations of upset captain, I'll play like, I'll lock in the next one, which would be self-made on the slate, and then kind of like optimize from there and look for other teams I want in there. So yes, I'm playing this game. I'm playing Fnatic. I think they're a much better team than SK. I don't think anyone's going to tell you any different. And so, yeah, I think that this game is probably the one. Fnatic is the team I probably have the most exposure to tomorrow on this slate.
All right. Well, it sounds like Alan's all in on Fnatic and says that no one else will tell you different. Michael, will you tell him any different on SK?
I will not. Fnatic in the ego ranking is 35% higher than, well, not 35% higher. 30. They have 35 more percentage points in the ego ranking, which is in a spot where there I think is like 65%. It hits 65% of the time, something like that. So it is 76%. So even higher. So these are one of the matchups where even though the teams have somewhat similar rankings, most of the time Fnatic is going to win this match. So let's do the lane by lane real quick. So Bwipo is better than GenX. I do think there are a lot of matchups where GenX can look good against Bwipo if they decide to take it slower and play something like Cho'Gath, where they're not really playing for the laning phase. They just want to get 2 objectives and kind of team fight later on. Self-made against Tanks, I think, is obviously the most important part of this matchup, because Tanks is the heartbeat of SK, and Self-made has looked very good for the past year and a half. So let me just get up their stats from today. So today, in their loss, Tanks had a pretty bad Hecarim game was 0-2 and 3. I don't think I'd really blame them all that much. It was 8-3. It's just a really slow game where they got bled out, which is bad. Like being a team that allows the other team to bleed you out, in my opinion, is like a team deficiency that if you want to be a very good team, you just can't let that happen to you unless you are like sure that your team is going to outscale. They had Hecarim, Orianna, Jhin against Gnar, Skarner, Azir, Tristana, which means there is no way that they're going to outscale the enemy team. So I think it was a huge mistake for them to allow themselves to get bled out in that way, because the later the game goes, the lower chance there is to win just based off of the champions. And then Fnatic today, we had a Graves game against a Hecarim, which is good. So you have a champion that SK is very likely to play in the Hecarim, and Fnatic has champions that are ready to play into it. Like even Graves. It's not a great matchup, but they've shown that they can play into that matchup. In the mid lane, Niski, I don't think Niski's very good, but Niski's better than Blue. And then Upset and Hylissang against Jezu and Treats. I think that they are also the better lane. So even though I'm very happy with how Tinks has played so far this season, and I want Tinks to do well, and I want Tinks to like be impactful for real life League of Legends, it's just not a really great spot for them to win the match. So I would say, I'll ask both of you, what do you think the chance that SK actually wins this match is?
I think because of the way that Fnatic still like needs games, it's like 25 or lower % chance personally.
Yeah, sounds about right. I was gonna say about 15%.
Okay.
I think Fnatic's gonna come with this one pretty hard.
So I would say, like, I think that we've kind of realized any team playing against Fnatic probably deserves 5 to 10% ownership. So if you play 5%, you're probably going to be around the field. If you play 10%, you're probably going to be either at the field or double. And it's difficult to say because like SK isn't. I would say you're probably double the field if you play 10%. SK isn't a team people think of as high scoring, but the fact they're playing against Fnatic might increase their ownership altogether. I think that this is the best case scenario, honestly, I think, is if Fnatic beats SK. SK realizes, wow, we got completely destroyed in the early game. We had no way to contest like these early objectives. We were just continuously ganked, and like we just didn't really put up much of a fight. This could be something that actually helps them in the long run because they realize they need to be a little bit more aggressive in the early game and like try to carve out those advantages earlier on. So I personally would probably fade SK, play Fnatic, and see where it goes from there with a lineup construction.
Okay. We're going to move on to our fourth game of the slate. We have our boys up, guys. Misfits 6-8 versus, oh no, G2 at 12-2. Michael, we'll start with you on this one. Will Misfits pull off the most miracle thing ever and beat G2 tomorrow?
So Misfits is listed as a 283 favorite. I think that's a bad line. I think they're probably closer to like 175 to 200. So I do think that it's a pretty good bet for them in real life. I think that it's easy to play them on DraftKings. So if let's say we think it's 70-30, right? Worst case scenario, it's a 70-30 matchup. That means that you can easily justify 6% Misfits, because like their chances of winning is 30%. Divide that by 5, because if they win, they'll be one of 5 teams. So like if it's completely random, they would have roughly a 6% chance to be the highest scoring team on the slate. The fact they're playing against G2 would increase that number for me. So maybe I get closer to 8 to 10%. And I think like I'll just do the lane by lane because I do think they have a chance to win. I think that Misfits is the type of team that is set up to play better against the good teams than the bad teams. And what I mean by that is like they have enough talent, but their play style is not the best. So Wunder against Hyrule, I think Wunder's obviously the better player. But as long as they draft towards Hyrule to get a favorable matchup, he could theoretically win the lane, but it's unlikely. Jankos against Razork. Jankos is obviously the better player. Ever since I said that like Jankos was going to be one of the best junglers on this patch. I think he's been one of the best junglers on this patch, even though he played a Nidalee game today.
He keeps playing,
which was pretty surprising.
Yeah,
but like they played it really well, where Jankos plus Caps would like go into the side lane, try to match up Lucian against Gnar, and then just continuously have Nidalee shadow the Lucian for chances of like getting kills under towers and stuff like that. So they know what they're doing. Like Jankos is still good in that scenario. Caps against Vetio. Caps is a significantly better player than Vetio. Reckless and Mickey against Kabe and Vander. I think this is relatively close. Not that Kabe is like as good as Reckless, because when we look back at this 10 years from now, it's going to be like, oh, well, Reckless was one of the best AD carries in European history, and Kabe wasn't. But I think that there are a lot of situations where Misfits is able to draft a lane that goes even and can play to their like slow, like play around the 20-minute mark kind of game. So that's probably the best case scenario for Misfits. I wish they would be more aggressive, but I doubt they're going to be more aggressive because it increases the number of opportunities for them to make a mistake. So that's basically it. If you want to do 6 to 10% Misfits in a GPP, good for you. I don't really think you're afraid of playing G2 in any situation. So it's a pretty straightforward matchup for me. Play G2 as much as you want. If you want to get exposure to Misfits, limit it to like 10%.
All right, Alan, we'll get your thoughts on this one.
And Jizuke on Echo is making a comeback, boys. They looked like they were going to lose this game from the first minute of the game, but now they're up 6-5. They're still down a little bit of gold. They've got 3 dragons. They're even on gold now.
Jizuke's in the LCS now. We're on the LEC. Thank you.
He is from Europe. It is relevant.
I saw Ghost face change, and I was like, EG must have done something good here. All right. Anyway,
my facial expressions on this one are going to be great. All right, Misfits versus G2. Alan, give us your thoughts. Will our boys take it?
I mean, I think that Michael did a pretty good job of making the case, and I do think that.
Oh my god, they chased down a Mundo! Oh my god, you fools! He regenerates health with his ultimate. Oh man, what an amazing game! I'm watching the replay right now. It's the most like clown fiesta thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. So I think Michael made the case for Misfits, and I agree. Like, I think that I will play more Misfits than other people tomorrow. Probably around 10%. I've already built a couple lineups with them in it, and if we die with the Misfits, we die with the Misfits. G2, on the other hand, I think I will also play a little bit of G2, but probably be under the field on G2. It's pretty rare that they're not at the top of the projections for the esports department, and they are not on this slate here. I think it's because like a couple of their games now, they have played some new compositions that seem to be pretty side lane focused, or new. I mean, they've played every composition ever at this point, but they're not like just skirmishing only. And so there's a chance that, you know, they don't go off tomorrow, but there's always the chance that G2 does go off tomorrow. So I will play a little bit of G2, a little bit of Misfits, but I think I already said it. Fnatic is more my favorite team here than G2.
All right. We'll go into our 5th and final game of the slate. We have the Mad Lions, 9-5 versus Rogue, 11-3. Yesterday, Mad Lions beat Schalke 04 to move up 1 game above Fnatic and SK. And then we had Rogue, who lost to G2 in a match that kind of seemed like they had the right plan, but then G2 kind of did their thing and took over the game. Hey, Alan, I want to get your thoughts on this one. Mad Lions versus Rogue. Will this one be DFS relevant? And who are you taking?
First, I want to talk about that Rogue G2 game. Yesterday, I was talking about the cosmic brain power that G2 seemingly has over every team in the LEC. And yeah, they just do, apparently. I put on Twitter the meme that was like, every team against G2 in the LEC, it's just like I guess we suck. I don't know how to play the game anymore. And then like they're just completely overwhelmed like 4 minutes into that game, and you could tell that they were just completely fucked. So that was a disappointing performance for me. And yeah, I think Mad Lions can beat Rogue. These are two teams that I would have put right next to each other at the beginning of the season. Rogue has definitely played really, really well this season, and obviously 2 losses to G2 doesn't make that any less true, except that they're bad against G2. But Mad Lions could certainly do what G2 did today and get some early kills on Rogue and overwhelm them. Except the thing that Mad Lions can't do is cleanly play out the game and make it a low kill score game like G2 did today. If Mad Lions gets that early lead, they're going to take like 6 more fights that they don't have to, and Humanoid's going to die a couple times randomly. So I do think that this game is very, very explosive for a DFS perspective. I thought the same thing about G2 and Rogue yesterday, so maybe, or today, I guess it really is. So, take that with a grain of salt, but I'm going to play quite a bit of Mad Lions because I think that they will be the lower owned team in this game, and I think that this game's probably a coin flip at this point in the season. Mad Lions has really started to look better. Although, what happened to them, like, from a fun standpoint? The interview today with Carzy was the most depressing interview. And I was just like, weren't you the guys that were like picking each other up after the games and like smiling on camera? And Carzy was just like, yeah, we played okay. I was like, okay, well, great. But anyway, I think they're gonna be fine. They're a good team, and Rogue is also a good team. But I want to play Mad Lions because they're gonna be very playable. On the slate, Evil Geniuses must be taking a dragon right now. Their soul dragon. Yep, they are. And so that makes Mad Lions aside for me. But I will play a little bit of Rogue with underdogs tomorrow. Like I'll play Rogue with Misfits and stuff like that to see if I could get something low owned there.
Yeah, gonna need EG to pick up some kills there, but I want to talk about pricing for just a second. I actually pulled it up, and Carzy is the cheapest 80 carry on the slate.
Not
behind
good.
Jezu, Jesla, Comp, Patrick. It's kind of crazy to me. So if Mad Lions being this cheap, Michael, do you think they're going to come in on pretty high ownership, or how are you handling this match?
Yeah, I think that it's a. Well, first of all, the reason I was doing this is because, yes, 100 Thieves just gave up Infernal Soul for actually nothing, which was incredible. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. I like that a lot. No kills no kills were caused, but overall, that's very good for the chance of EG winning this match. The match for tomorrow, Mad Lions against Rogue. Rogue is a -200 favorite. That's another line that I think is bad. I think that Mad Lions is much closer to Rogue than that. Going into this split, I mean, a lot of people would have Mad Lions as just the better team overall. Like, Mad Lions, I was skeptical about the jungle change, and I still am. I think Shadow is still a better jungler, and I think that when we get into this next patch, I think that it would have showed itself even more that Shadow would be better. But Armut was 100% an upgrade over the previous top laner. So even if it was like a small downgrade in the jungle, it was a big upgrade in top lane. And Armut hasn't been as good as people were hoping for. But he had really high expectations coming into the split, so that's pretty tough. But I mean, if you told me before the season started Mad Lions would be higher ranked than Rogue, I think that nobody would be very surprised. In the EGOAT ranking, Rogue is 81%, Mad Lions is 65%. 65%. So that's a 16% difference, and that is also in the range where it is like 76%, I believe. So that is a good reason to favor Rogue, but this is where I would kind of have an issue with like how the stat is actually no, that's the 59% one. So 59% still I would be against that because -200 is like 66%. The EGOAT ranking difference would suggest closer to 59%. I think that is closer to like 50-50. I think that Mad Lions is better in the early game. I think Rogue is better in the late game and better from a macro perspective. I think Mad Lions is a better team fighting team. If we go lane by lane, I think that in the top lane, I think that Armut is better long term than Ottawamne. It's difficult to like beat Ottawamne in lane and have a very volatile matchup, but I genuinely think that Armut is better at this point. Inspired against Elyoya, I think that Inspired is better than Elyoya, but they have a similar style, which is a good. It's a very good thing. Like if you think about all the LPL matches where you have a carry jungler against a carry jungler, specifically when we had like Peanut going up against good teams, but they were both carry junglers and Peanut could create an advantage in the jungle, slow the game down, and like win a match. I think that's kind of the situation we're in with Elyoya and Inspired. Larson against Humanoid. I know that most people like Larson more at this point, especially with how this season has gone, but I think they're a lot closer than a lot of other people do. And then I personally prefer Karzi and Kaiser over Hansama and Shrimby. So I think that there are at least like 3 to 4 spots where you could make the argument for Mad Lions having the better player. Probably 3 is like for sure. You could easily make that argument. Maybe the 4th one if you think that you could convince people Humanoid's better than Larson somehow. Probably not. I think that in terms of exposure, you definitely want exposure to both teams. If Rogue wins this match, I would also assume that it's a high scoring affair because just because of how Mad Lions plays. When they played early on in the season, actually it wasn't early on in the season, it was week 4, day 1, Rogue won 18-5. I don't think that's indicative of how like they would match up with one another all the time. Mad Lions had a pretty good draft, but they messed up in the mid lane specifically. Larson completely outplayed Humanoid, and they had a bad matchup in top lane with Gragas against Renekton. But I can't not play Mad Lions here. If I think that Mad Lions is actually closer to a 50-50, then I need to play them at least 10%. I'd probably want to play them closer to 20%. And then Rogue, what do you think about Rogue tomorrow, ownership-wise?
I think that they will probably be lower than think that they, whatever we say, it's probably going to be lower. But I like my initial gut was like 15, and I bet they're lower than that.
I could see that. It's a tough spot. Like yeah. There are like the easy narratives you could make. It's like, oh, bounce back spot for Rogue, or like you could say, oh, Rogue's a bad team now. They're gonna lose like 4 of their next 5 games.
Right. Yeah, and that could be a thing tomorrow because Rogue looked bad and people were upset. So
that's why I would think maybe the ownership is depressed, and then I would want to play Rogue more.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to do, depending on what other teams you want to get exposure to, maybe you could justify playing 20-ish% of both of these teams. I wouldn't hate that. And it's a good match. It should be a fun match to watch, but just because it's a fun match to watch doesn't mean it's going to be good for DraftKings scoring. So that's the only thing I'd be afraid of.
I'll say if you're playing Rogue, do what you can to play Hansama captain, or at least get Hansama in your lineup. Like he outscores his teammates so much and outprojects his teammates so much in department projections that like if you're playing Rogue, you have to have Hansama. Like when they win, he has very good scores, so it's very hard to get away from him.
All right, sounds good. You guys ready to move on to the LCS?
Oh, let's do it.
All right, let's jump right into it. Our first game of the slate for Saturday is going to be Dignitas versus Golden Guardians. Dignitas earlier today beat TSM in a kind of bizarre match. TSM took a team fight in a choke point against Rel, and things didn't go well. So, Alan, we'll start with you on this one. Dignitas versus Golden Guardians. Who do you like here?
Rhymes for days.
Like is really a strong word for this matchup, I think. I think that Dignitas probably wins. They have not really lost to bad teams yet this year, and it just doesn't feel like something they're going to do if they want to make the playoffs, and they're just much better than Golden Guardians at every position, which is a hard thing to say for Dignitas, who I think just have middle of the road players at every position in the LCS, but Golden Guardians is just that bad at this point. But I don't really like playing teams against Golden Guardians in fantasy at this point. They just never seem to get there because Golden Michael, your food's here. Golden Guardians just they never get to a stage of the game where they can like team fight anyone because they've already lost by the time that like teams would want to be grouping anyway. And so just generally speaking, this game doesn't really appeal to me. I would be okay if I go for a nice walk tomorrow during this one.
All right, Michael, we'll get your thoughts on this one. Dignitas versus the Golden Guardians. What are you doing with this matchup?
So I think that before the season started, there were a fair number of people who had hopes for Niles, but I think Fake God has showed that he can do his job as a top laner on a pretty good team, which is, it's an admirable quality in a top laner. At least he's not a Rome, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Adequate job, one might even say. Adequate and admirable.
Admirable. Yes. Some people would say that. Dardoch against Iconic. Dardoch's obviously the better player. Somebody in Discord today said, let me just get the quote about Dardoch. They said, I love Dardoch. Perfect balance of cocky and confident. And I think that is accurate. Everybody loves Dardoch when he's talking in front of a camera. It's just very funny in general. Maybe there are some people out there who remember the Team Liquid documentary that they actually put out a while ago where he was like a psychopath. That was pretty cool. Soligo against a Blaze Olive, pretty similar. Neo and Aframu against Stickstay and Nube. I think this is one of the only bot lanes that Dignitas has a gigantic advantage over, because they're not like huge, we're going to destroy you in lane kind of players. They're more like, we're going to go even in the laning phase. Aframu's probably going to try to roam at some point, and then we're going to fight you around like the neutral objectives and just try to like eke out a win that way. I cannot play Golden Guardians at this point. I think that with Dignitas, the fact that they're so high priced, you can really only use them as a secondary stack. So I just, it's really tough. I don't know how you play either of these teams in this spot. The narrative you'd have to convince yourself of is Dignitas it's actually Golden Guardians doesn't care anymore, completely degaffs it, and gives up like 20 kills. It would be completely against like the playstyle that they've had for most of the season. Have they been a high death per loss team?
No, they have not.
Yeah, so it would have to be against the stats, and you'd have to justify it with some kind of like narrative, like, oh, they don't care as much anymore. They're going to be more aggressive in the early game. They're going to have more opportunities for like mass kills. That's what you have to convince yourself of. It's going to be really difficult to have Dignitas as your primary stack, which it's going to be difficult for everyone to have it as their primary stack. So maybe you can justify it a little bit more in that way. But then at that point, you're really like 3 or 4 levels deep, and you're just like big braining a play that might just, or galaxy braining a play that just might not work out for you at all. So I'm afraid of it personally. I don't think that I can really do much with that.
All right, we're going to move on to our second game of the slate. We have 100 Thieves, who just ended up losing to Evil Geniuses, versus TSM, who we talked about earlier. Had the kill lead, had the gold lead, but threw to Dig. I'm favoring TSM in this matchup, but man, this one seems like it could go either way. Michael, we'll start with you on this one. 100 Thieves versus TSM. What are your thoughts?
So, 100 Thieves is the favorite. Oh, that's so funny. TSM should obviously be the favorite in this situation, especially if Ryoma plays again. This is like the perfect storm, because there were, I think, 2 or 3 matches last year where 100 Thieves played against TSM and it was like 25-20. I don't know why it happened like that, but like Ryoma would be on like a 0 every single game. They would go relatively even in the mid game, and then there would be like 5 team fights that just allowed both teams to skyrocket up the DraftKings leaderboards. I specifically remember watching a TSM versus 100 Thieves match last summer in a Chick-fil-A drive-through. The Chick-fil-A had about 45 cars in it, so it took me about 20 minutes to actually get my food. I watched most of the game in that situation.
Mhm.
The food was delicious, obviously. Got a combo meal. You get the garlic herb ranch, and then you have a nice time.
No free ads.
Well, they're paying me. They might not be paying you, but I have been receiving checks from Chick-fil-A for quite some time now. Someday against Huni, I think that it's very close. They're very similar in like their career arcs, except for Huni didn't cash out as early as Someday did. I think that they're both carry style players. You could see some really interesting matchups. I think the chance that we see a Gangplank versus Gnar matchup is pretty high tomorrow in this spot. Closer against Spica. I think most people will say that Closer is better than Spica. I think it's very close. It really comes down to the draft, and I think both these players like don't have much of a say in the style they play for the team. Ryoma against Power of Evil. Power of Evil is so much better than Ryoma. It's ridiculous how much better Power of Evil is than Ryoma. It doesn't mean that Ryoma can't score well tomorrow. It just means that Power of Evil is a better player. I do kind of like 100 Thieves in this spot. The fact that they're favorites is going to depress their ownership, and like all the Chick-fil-A memories are making me want to play 100 Thieves more because they might just go with like a 25-20 game where you want to game stack. I'm just saying, maybe game stack tomorrow. Maybe you don't game stack tomorrow. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. FBI and Huhi against Lost and Sword Art is pretty even. Most people would prefer 100 Thieves in that spot, and most people would prefer Closer in the jungle. So I think you have like I'm opposite of public perception in 2 spots. Some people would probably say Someday is a lot better than Huni. So I think that I'm maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people think that 100 Thieves is actually better than TSM. I don't see it at all. I think it's hilarious that it's set up this way, where 100 Thieves is listed as the favorite. They are a -118 to -112. Even the sportsbook have it like that. What is going on? You definitely have to play TSM in this spot. TSM, make a real life bet. If maybe if you don't believe me about the whole DraftKings angle, play a bet on TSM. I think that's definitely the way to go. But maybe the ego ranking disagrees with me. So while you give us your thoughts, Alan, I'm gonna look up the ego ranking.
All right, Alan, let's get your thoughts on this one. 100 Thieves versus TSM. Which way are you leaning? And will this one be DFS relevant?
I wish that 100 Thieves would have just won against Evil Geniuses, because the game ended up not being fantasy relevant, and then we could play tons and tons of TSM tomorrow. But I have a feeling that 100 Thieves is going to be pretty low owned in this matchup, because today they came in at like 10% against Evil Geniuses, who I think the public perception on is probably lower than TSM. Although I guess TSM lost to Dignitas today too, so who knows? But so that makes me a little bit more nervous about playing them. But I still want to play some TSM. If we look at the esports department projections, Lost is the top projected player on the slate. 100 Thieves has played just like 1,000 of these long ass games where people get lots of kills in team fights, especially, and team fights are the best scenario for DraftKings scoring. Because even sometimes high kill games won't matter as much as like just team fought games. So 100 Thieves just gives up a lot of points like that. So if TSM wins tomorrow, I do think it's a good spot for TSM. But I think I will play both sides of the matchup relatively heavily, like I did with 100 Thieves, Evil Geniuses today, because of those types of scenarios where there's lots of team fights. Like that game that they just played, there were a lot of like team fight looking scenarios that just didn't happen. So I think that makes me like this game even more. So I think I'm just gonna have exposure to both sides. I will probably lean towards the TSM side, but I'll probably be higher than the field on 100 Thieves, because I do expect them to go even lower on tomorrow than 10%. Maybe they're 8, 7, something like that. So So that will make me probably play 100 Thieves around 20 to 25 tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right.
I do prefer TSM as well, though. It's a weird distinction to make. Like, we both prefer TSM from like the real life winning chances perspective, but if 100 Thieves is 7 or 8% owned, it's very easy to convince yourself to play 25%. The one thing I wanted to mention, for the ego ranking, TSM and 100 Thieves have flipped since the last slates. So TSM is now an 8% favorite, which is not very significant from an ego perspective. The other thing I wanted to mention was something I was talking to John about on his post from earlier today. He took down the Triumphant Warrior. Was it the Triumphant Warrior or was it Shock Blast? It was Triumphant Warrior, right?
Yeah, the 333, yeah.
Yeah, so he won because he played live sandbox. And what I posted on his, I replied to his post and I said, I think this would be a great opportunity to explain how, even though there aren't many good reasons to play LSB or statistics that support that, the fact they're going to be low owned is a sufficient reason to justify playing them. This is what people miss because they assume that you had some super deep 10 level deep super secret strat that made you like them, when it was much more simple and easier to convince yourself in the future that you're going to play them just because they're low owned. Like, it's an important distinction to make. Like, there are matches where I think to myself, I think that this underdog is like much lower in the money line than they should be, which kind of suggests that the public perception of them is lower than it should be as well. But there are other spots where it's like, nobody's going to play this team because they shouldn't win the match. So if you just play them, then you have a chance to win because no one else is going to do it.
Yeah.
So you kind of, it's never going to feel good. You're going to feel like a jerk when they lose like very badly, but it's easy. It's an easy spot to get yourself into because just from a game theory perspective, nobody else is going to do it. If it happens, you give yourself huge upside. So you have to keep all those things in mind when you're making your lineups.
Yeah, when you're betting on sports, who wins and loses obviously matters humongously, and I think that transfers for a lot of people. But like when you're playing DFS, it's really about like how you play the game more than like what you know about the teams definitely matters, and like being like this team is better than the other team because of these certain statistics, and it lines up better for them statistically speaking than like their odds might imply, and so I think people are going to play them less. But it's more about like how do you play the game against your opponents rather than like do I know more about who's going to win when.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move into our third game of the slate. We have Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. A game that's kind of starting to become a rivalry, I think, once Jensen moved over to TL probably a few years ago. Don't actually know how many years ago. It's been a while. I'm old. But C9 versus TL, this should be a pretty good game. My question is, will either side be fantasy relevant? I'm thinking if TL wins, C9 feeds a bunch of kills. If C9 wins, this might be more macro-based than TL. Just hang out in the back line. But Alan, I want your thoughts on this one. Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Give us your thoughts.
You were on it for me. Like, I think that if TL wins the game, then they could be fantasy relevant here, although who knows, because sometimes they just opt out of like kill situations even when the other team wants to give it to them. But I think that if Cloud9 wins, it's going to be tough for them to get enough kills for it to be relevant, and I do expect Cloud9 to win tomorrow. I think that they're just the better team right now, and they've been playing a lot better. I think that Blabber and Perks is a pretty big mismatch right now for the Santorin Jensen mid jungle duo. So I would expect Cloud9 to win this game, but I don't really love it for them fantasy wise, which is rare. So that makes me even like want to go away from them a little bit more because I play so much Cloud9 and this doesn't feel like a great Cloud9 spot for me. So I would rather swing the bat with some other teams because I think Cloud9 is going to come in hugely owned here. Team Liquid will probably come in pretty largely owned too because of that notion that Cloud9 dies a lot in a loss. But I really expect Cloud9 to win this game tomorrow. Like, if I were gonna set the line tomorrow, it would be much more heavily Cloud9 favored, especially because they lost to Team Liquid last time around in a kind of goofy game. And if we look at the esports department projections, like the first Cloud9 player that shows up in captain spot is the, let's see, like 15th player on the list, and it's Sven and 80 carry, and that's just because Team Liquid, like, they give up historically low kills in desperate loss. Now maybe they try to approach the game a little bit different tomorrow because they know how Cloud9's going to play the game, and that could be an angle that you might want to explore, but personally I don't. I think that Cloud9 just kind of runs over the game like they did last week against TSM. Or not TSM, who was that? 100 Thieves.
All right, Michael, we'll go with you on this one. C9 versus TL. What are you doing with this one?
Sure. So the first time these teams played, Team Liquid won 24-11. Alfari was 5-0-12 against Fudge, who was 0-4-5. The Renekton Gragas matchup you see a lot where teams just pick Gragas into Renekton, and it's just not like you're not doing anything. You're just trying to neutralize the lane, but a lot of the times if he gets pressure, Renekton's going to be able to do a decent amount of like not like damage, but damage to the top lane, because until Gragas gets some of those tank items underneath him with like armor and stuff like that, you're just not going to be able to fight him. Santorin was 9-2-10 on Hecarim against Blabber, who was playing Skarner 2-3-7. I do not expect the jungle matchup to look like that at all tomorrow. I think Blabber will be on a much better early game champion. Jensen was on Orianna 4-2-14 against Perks, who was on Lucian 7-5-3. It's a weird spot for them in that draft because they had their two main damage sources were Lucian and Ashe, who are both heavily physical damage. So basically, once Renekton, Hecarim, and Tom Kench get a little bit of, and even Orianna with like a Seeker's Arm Guard gets a decent amount of armor on them, they're going to feel pretty tanky against the other team. So it eliminates some of the winning chances, I think, for Cloud9 in that draft specifically. And then it was Aphelios and Tom Kench against Ashe and Thresh. Team Liquid was the better team at that point, potentially. Perks was not playing well at that point in the season. This was week 3. So like Perks was still questionable at that point. Like he hadn't looked great consistently. Now I think we've finally gotten Perks where Perks is just a better player than Jensen. I've been saying that for a long time. I think that like he was in a little bit of a dip, and I don't think that he's at Perks levels from previous years, but I think he's better than Jensen again. So we have Alfari, who's probably better than Fudge. We have Blabber, who's better than Santorin. We have Perks, who's better than Jensen. And there is Sven and Vulcan, who I think Sven is better than Tactical, and I think Vulcan and Core JJ are pretty even. Maybe it's a little Core JJ favored. So we have between 3 to 3.5 positions favored for Cloud9. I prefer Cloud9. In the EGOAT ranking, we have C9, who is the highest team in the LCS. So they're given the 100% percentage. Can you two guess which where Team Liquid is ranked and what their percentage is? Like most of the time when you go between like 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, it's really not that significant. How big of a gap do you think there is between C9 and Team Liquid?
Yeah, I mean, Team Liquid's number 2 would be my guess because their earned gold stats are pretty good, but I would maybe venture like 10% lower, 15% lower.
Ghost?
Yeah, I think it'd be around 15% lower.
Cloud9 is 24% better than Team Liquid, which is very surprising based on how a lot of these stats go. So when there's a 24% differential between the two teams in the EGOAT rankings, the favorite wins 67% of the time. And that's statistically relevant. It could be kind of self-serving because I do think C9 is a better team. I do think C9 is better in multiple roles. I did expect them to have a better season. And when the first time that these teams played against each other, I think I probably said C9 is going to win the match. They're the better team overall. And Team Liquid put together a good series. or a good match. So the question becomes, if C9 wins, is Team Liquid going to turtle, or are they going to contest them in the early game? I think this is probably a spot where you'll see Team Liquid be more aggressive in the early game, which will give Cloud9 a little bit higher of a ceiling. I want to play C9 again. I'll probably fade Team Liquid altogether. And if Team Liquid wins, then I'll probably lose a decent chunk of money. But the money line is minus 135 for C9 against Team Liquid at plus 102. I think it's a good real life bet. I think it's a good DraftKings bet. And if it doesn't work out, then you can send me hate messages. But I'm pretty sure Cloud9 wins this match tomorrow.
I'm with you.
All right, sounds good. We'll move on to our fourth game of the slate. We have Evil Geniuses, who ended up beating 100 Thieves today. Kind of a low-score game, even though there were multiple times where the teams could have fought, but everyone was just a little too shy. And not like the shy, who always fights. Michael, we're going to start with you on this one. Evil Geniuses versus Immortals. Who do you like? What are you doing with this game? Or are you completely fading it?
So Evil Geniuses is very expensive tomorrow. They're first or second in almost every single spot, except for support, where Ignar is the third most expensive player. I heavily prefer Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses is one of the teams that I think I'm higher on than most people. Coming off their win over 100 Thieves, it's not going to leave a great impression with most people because they didn't have very high kill score. They're not going to be great for DraftKings today. So I would like to double down on Evil Geniuses and just play them again. The one issue is that if CLG beats Immortals today and gives up a lot of kills, then people will jump on Evil Geniuses tomorrow. So it's like I could kind of get screwed over by this, which would suck. I think that in a perfect world, Immortals would beat CLG, and then people would kind of have a question mark in their minds, like, is Evil Geniuses that much better than Immortals? Maybe I play Immortals and I actually get a good play for DraftKings. But when you look at it lane by lane, Impact is much better than Revenge. Svenskeren and Xerxes are pretty close. Jizuke, in my opinion, is much better than Insanity. There were some questionable points in this game today where Jizuke was kind of inting, but that's just who Jizuke is. If you don't know that Jizuke is going to do that potentially in every single game, then you haven't been really paying much attention because the guy's a psychopath. Definitely an Ignar, I think, are better than Raze and Destiny. Two of the players are from Australia. The other two players aren't from Australia. Obviously, the people who are not from Australia are going to be better than the people from Australia. One of them has kangaroos just running around in the wild. That's outrageous. That's not even real life. So, I mean, this is a serious question for both of you. You're both from North America. Most of your lives, you've lived in North America.
100%.
Do you think,
Sure.
have you considered the fact that kangaroos are real things, or are they fantasy for you guys? You know what I mean? Because people tell us they're real,
Yeah.
but I've never seen a kangaroo in real life, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm not an outside of my reality denier some other people are, but I don't know about Australia in general.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw a seahorse, I was like, no fucking way, dude. So, yeah, I get what you're saying.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Where you're like, oh my god, that thing is actually real.
Yeah, kangaroos are like large rats that hop around, and they are as prolific as rats, apparently, in Australia, which is...
Maybe the most offensive thing ever said on this podcast.
My only exposure to kangaroos was Roger and Tekken with boxing gloves, so that's how I imagine kangaroos.
There you go. Beautiful.
Your age is showing. Did you play the Tekken volleyball?
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
Tekken volleyball, so good. So good.
All right, I'm gonna hit Evil Geniuses Immortals really quick because I've got to get on the road here. So,
right.
EG, I think is the much better team than Immortals. I agree with Michael on pretty much everything. I would even prefer Svenskeren over Xerxes at this point. Xerxes has not really been that impressive to me so far in this season. So I think it's a really good Evil Geniuses spot because they did just score so low. And if you look over at the projections, they're still projecting really well because they are that kind of team so far this year. They're high kill per win, high death per loss, high combined kills per minute, all the stuff that you want them to be. Just because they had one game where they didn't get there, and 100 Thieves backed off a lot of times when they probably should have gone in, and Evil Geniuses could have got a lot more kills. That makes Evil Geniuses an even more attractive team. So I will definitely play some EG tomorrow because they are also a high salary team, which seems to depress ownership sometimes. It'll just depend on what I can get them with, but there's enough like underdog looks tomorrow that I think I would still want to play Evil Genius with some of those dogs.
Okay. We'll move right into our fifth and final match of the slate. Counter Logic Gaming versus FlyQuest. Alan, we'll go right to you for this one. Who do you like? What are you doing with this matchup? Or are you full fading it?
FlyQuest. I actually really like FlyQuest in this spot. I expect CLG to beat Immortals today, and for the hype train to be rolling on CLG. And at that point, I want to be on the other side of the hype train. And I think that FlyQuest and CLG is a straight sort of coin flip game. But at the beginning of the season, I would have made FlyQuest probably like minus 140 sort of favorite. And so if it's played as if it's a coin flip game, or if CLG wins today, I would guess that it'll be played as if CLG is the favorite, especially because I think they have the lower salary on the slate. Is that right?
CLG. Yeah, CLG is the underdog, but they're also pretty far away on the money line. It's minus 164 for FlyQuest, plus 125 for CLG.
Oh wow. Okay. So I think that especially when CLG wins today, that a lot of people are going to pile all in on CLG tomorrow, and that will make me want to play lots and lots of FlyQuest because I think that they have a really good upside in the win, and it just becomes one of those like plant your flag kind of spots. Like tomorrow, I think I'm gonna want to try and go for the win with this one because I think that not a lot of people are going to be that interested in playing FlyQuest, and they project as the second best team on the slate in a win. And so I am going to play a lot of exposure to FlyQuest, like probably 60% would be my guess tomorrow. Like I got very exposed to CLG on this slate for similar reasons. Looks like CLG came in a little bit higher owned than I expected them to be, so it probably won't be as like good a play as I thought it would be, but it's the exact same kind of spot for me tomorrow. So I'll play FlyQuest with 100 Thieves, TSM, Evil Geniuses, Cloud9 tomorrow, and that'll probably be the majority of my exposure to the slate tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Michael, your thoughts here. Counter Logic Gaming versus FlyQuest.
I like this game. This is probably my favorite game on the slate. I want to play both sides as much as I can if I'm making a bunch of lineups. I think that I agree. I think that CLG was a great play against Immortals today. So if they are successful and other people play them today, they're going to just roll it over and tomorrow play CLG again against FlyQuest. They're perfectly set up for DraftKings scoring. Like FlyQuest, CLG, and C9 stylistically are probably the three best teams for DraftKings when they win. I think that in the top lane, Licorice is better than Finn. I think that's very easy for me to say. Jose Deodo and Broxa. Broxa's probably still better than Jose Deodo. I know Jose Deodo's been talked up a lot. I still prefer Broxa for sure. Palafox against Pobelter, I prefer Pobelter. And then Johnson and Diamond against Wild Turtle and Smoothie. I genuinely believe Wild Turtle is the worst AD carry in North America. So I do prefer Johnson in that spot. But because of how close these teams are and how well they match up stylistically, I'm not going to depress my CLG ownership and my Wild Turtle captain ownership just because I think he's bad. You can be a bad player and still score a lot of points because the rest of your team carved out an early game advantage. So in this spot, you have to play both teams if you're playing more than one lineup. That's basically it. I think it's pretty it's just not controversial.
Yeah, I agree, except no one will do it tomorrow. Because
no one do what?
No one will play. People don't play both sides in this kind of game ever. Which you're right. They should. Yeah, because it's the same thing. I think they were talking about it on the Gold Card podcast, where it's if LNG and LGD go up against each other tonight, like nobody's playing that game because it feels bad to put those kind of teams in your lineups, but they win games, they win slates. So somebody has to win when two bad teams play. You got to remember that.
That's very true. Someone does have to win. League of Legends does end eventually.
No ties in League of Legends, baby.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank everyone for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the Esports Department YouTube channel. I also want to thank Michael and Alan for joining me tonight. You can find Michael at League of Items on Twitter and Alan at LCS Picks. You can also find me on Twitter at XGhostWriter90. Be sure to hit us up if you already haven't. If you are looking to resubscribe to the Esports Department, you can get 10% off a subscription using the code IEDGE. You know the drill.
Spell it.
Subscription?
Spell it for the people.
How to spell subscription?
No, not that one.
SUB.
No. IEDGE.
What? The code IEDGE?
IEDGE. IEDGE.
IEDGE. That is how you get 10% off at the Esports Department. Good luck on tomorrow's slate, everybody, and let's go win some money.
Boom.
Let's do it.